Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 17th of March. I'm Maeve McMahon and you're watching Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, the EU's top diplomat Kaja Kallas says there's, quote, no appetite to extend the mandate of the EU's naval mission into the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking after EU foreign ministers met in Brussels, she insisted nobody wants to go actively into this war. Overnight, the conflict raged on, with Israel launching wide-scale attacks on Iran. 4 missiles hit Tehran in the last few hours, and one attack hit the US embassy in Baghdad. Lebanon has also been drawn into the conflict after Hezbollah launched rockets into Israel in retaliation for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. Over 850 are reported dead in Lebanon and thousands internally displaced. For more, we can cross now to Dubai and bring in Euronews correspondent Jane Witherspoon, who's standing by for us. Good morning, Jane. Just tell us first, what is the latest there and, of course, across the Middle East?
Good morning. Well, overnight we heard those public safety alerts for the first time since Friday. We were woken to them, the first one at around 5 a.m. this morning. And what followed I can only describe was the loudest boom we have heard since the war began. Now, my house shook, the floors, the windows all shook. It was so bad that, in fact, I took my children out of their bedroom and their beds and put them into mine for safety. Now, that said, people are remaining extremely vigilant here. We're following guidelines, and obviously the air defence team are doing an incredible job. The authorities here expressed their deep gratitude for the European countries who are supporting that defence, in particular France, Italy, Germany and the UK.
And meanwhile, Jane, Iran is threatening to wage an economic war in the region. Tell us more about that.
That's correct. They're actually diversifying now and putting economic pressure across the region, which, of course, will have a ripple effect on global economies. Now, Iran maintain that stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz. And, of course, they're now ramping things up in the form of social media threats. They're putting warnings out, I guess, to try and exert some kind of psychological pressure on people. Now, this, of course, comes as the new supreme Iranian leader remains unseen still, but leaked audio has revealed that he actually cheated death by just seconds when he went out into his garden just as a missile hit his home, killing his father.
Indeed, Jane Witherspoon, thank you so much for that live update from Dubai. And as you say, reports are surfacing this morning that Mojtaba Khamenei escaped death by seconds. That's according to leaked audio reveals. You can read more about that on Euronews.com. But now, US President Donald Trump has said that due to the ongoing war in the Middle East, Iran has been, quote, obliterated, and the, quote, powerful military campaign in Iran would continue. Now, the war began just days after President Donald Trump's Board of Peace convened for the very first time in Washington, D.C. to discuss the reconstruction of Gaza. For more, Euronews' Marit Gwynne-Jones sat down with the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean, that's Dubravka Suica, who was actually physically in D.C. for that occasion. And Marit started by asking the Commissioner if the Board of Peace was a credible body or not.
It's hard to say whether it's credible or not, but at that moment it was meant for the reconstruction of Gaza. And I think regardless of this situation development in the Middle East, we shouldn't forget Gaza. And I think we have to concentrate on Gaza because the situation remains dire and even worse in Gaza as we speak now. So we have to continue working for them.
Yet the charter, so the mandate that President Trump has drafted for the board, does not make one mention of Gaza. And the European Commission itself is questioning whether this is in line with the UN Charter, for example, whether it contradicts the UN Charter. So given all of that, do you think that the board is credible? Again, if I may ask you that question.
The invitation for the Board of Peace was received by President von der Leyen, and I was representing her at that meeting. So it doesn't mean that we legitimized this board. We were there as we were just observing what was going on. This was a good occasion for me me as commissioner to meet all the ministers from the region. For me, it was a good moment to meet all of them at one place. But at the same time, we are not in line with some of the Board of Peace rules of procedure, with the scope and with different issues, so that we are not members. We are just there. We were there for courtesy reasons.
So finally on this, will you continue to attend any meeting that are specifically related to the situation in Gaza?
We will decide on case-by-case basis.
OK. So obviously there is a war now that is threatening to spill over into the wider Middle East. You as Commissioner, you're responsible for relations with some of these countries. How does this war affect your work and the cooperation with the countries such as Lebanon that are directly affected by the conflict?
So the situation is developing as we speak, so we have to adapt to the situation. It's also very difficult to start working on Middle East strategy at the moment because the situation develops. But we have to be active, we have to be engaged, and we want to be engaged. This is the very reason why this portfolio exists, because President von der Leyen wanted us to be present and to be not only passive spectators, but to be players in the region. At this moment, unfortunately, we are mostly payers. We are paying a lot, and our influence is not that huge. But we want to increase our influence in the region and globally.
Part of this region that you also oversee as well is obviously Israel. Do you support now the French calls for that they broker talks between Israel and Lebanon to come to a kind of settlement?
For us, only dialogue, only de-escalation, and only diplomacy work. And this is my position, and this is the position of the European Commission. I could say 3 Ds: dialogue, diplomacy, and de-escalation. And I support, of course, this. Unfortunately, the proxies, Iranian proxies, Hezbollah started this, and then it was, if I may say, returned by Israeli strikes, which is not good for the people of Lebanon, not good for anyone in the region.
If I may, you say diplomacy. Can the EU really push for that, given the situation that we're seeing today, where we're not seeing any diplomacy? It's just conflict.
Yeah, but we are not supporting any conflict. We are really we are calling everyone, all the forces there, to de-escalate, because it doesn't bring anyone anything good. First, people of the region, but also globally, to Europe, there is an impact, but there is also impact on the whole world. If you look at energy prices or crisis, you see what's going on in the world, and this won't be easy to return to the zero position as it was before this conflict, because the impact is huge, especially on oil, but also on other sources of energy.
And looking at Iran, is there anything that you can do as Commissioner to support the Iranian people?
We are the only one in the world who was and who has been and who is supporting at this moment civil society organizations in Iran, because we didn't have any bilateral connections with the government, but with civil society organizations via our implementing partners on the ground. So there we have been doing a lot for Afghan people who are refugees in Iran. If you know, it's more than 100 million euro which we invested in civil society organizations as of 2021. So this is what we can do at the moment, and this is what we have been doing. So helping people through non-governmental organizations.
Now, the war in the Middle East has nothing to do with NATO and is not a NATO war. That's the message from the office of the German Chancellor. For more on the mood among NATO allies, Euronews correspondent Shona Murray sent us this update.
Well, good morning, Maeve. And just as we thought the turmoil from last January when Donald Trump said he wanted to take over Greenland was coming to an end, Donald Trump, it appears, is trying to draw NATO into his war with Iran, with comments at the weekend saying that NATO would face a very bad future if it doesn't support Donald Trump and help sort out the situation with the Strait of Hormuz. I caught up with the Finnish Foreign Affairs Minister, Elina Valtonen, and I asked her about this prospect.
NATO, first and foremost, its purpose is, as the North Atlantic Treaty says, for the North Atlantic security, and therefore that's our top priority. And also, NATO is a defensive alliance in any case. But having said all this, of course, we will be closely scrutinizing together with our partners and allies, so both in NATO but also in the European Union, whether there are ways in which we can help to both have the Strait of Hormuz open up, but also to make it secure going forward as well.
NATO is a defensive alliance, not an offensive alliance, so therefore it can't be dragged into a war of the United States and Israel's making. Is that what you're saying?
NATO is indeed a defensive alliance, and we won't be dragged into any war of choice. But having said all this, we, of course, have a collective interest, and I should say not only within NATO, but as the world, to have the oil flowing and also the situation to de-escalate. And that is certainly something we are calling for.
OK, so what's then the EU and I guess NATO, but let's say European response going to be to try to help reopen and keep open the Strait of Hormuz, given the impact it's having on the global economy and oil prices?
Yeah, so, today in Brussels, but also in the upcoming days, we will be discussing this with our closest partners and allies, so both within the European Union and in NATO, whether there should be some sort of an operation which could be there for that precise purpose, that we both keep this strait open, not just for now, but also for the future. But having said all this, it will require very close scrutiny because, for instance, I can say that for countries like Finland, we as NATO members and securing a very long border with Russia as well, we certainly need our capabilities first and foremost to deter the threat of Russia against the entire alliance.
Back a few months ago, there was Greenland. OK, then you have months before that, all NATO allies saying that they're going to increase spending to 5%, and everyone did that. And now you have Donald Trump taking away the Russian sanctions against the Kremlin, which is probably one of the most effective thing that Europe has done. Now that Putin can get all this money from the oil revenue, it means he can spend it on the war in Ukraine and actually Russian attacks against NATO territory.
Well, you see, the Russian economy showed some serious cracks earlier this year. And many were, of the opinion that finally the sanctions that we have put on do work. And certainly the sanctions have played a massive role in weakening Russia's fiscal position, which is good because Russia is using its rubles essentially to fund its war machine. But now that the oil price has been ticking up and it probably will be staying there for some time, that certainly helps Russia on a daily basis.
Should Europe say, OK, we will help you, but we need a better deal on Ukraine, whether it's security guarantees, or we need you to take away the tariffs that you've imposed on us that are really damaging our economies or creating global instability? Certainly,
if there's going to be a decision to be helping out with the Strait of Hormuz, then certainly there's a lot of leverage that we can also make use of. But let's...
Like what? What would you think?
Let's not rush into conclusions here, but what has to be said that not only Ukraine, but also Europe have very strong cards, especially in the long term.
And now moving on, even though everyone outside Brussels is talking about the Oscars this week and the exceptional wins of European actors, inside Brussels, everyone's talking about Manfred Weber, the German centre-right politician accused of teaming up with the far right after promising his voters he would not. But who is the 53-year-old who's been EPP party boss since 2022? Jakob Janis takes a look.
In Brussels, no one throws a political party quite like Conservatives. And tomorrow, the European People's Party celebrates its 50th anniversary. All eyes are now on party's boss, Manfred Weber, who doesn't just want to make kings, he wants to be one. But while the party looks back at its history, your reporter wants to look at his true currency. Because for Weber, it's all about the votes. So let's count them, shall we? Remember 2019? Because Weber certainly does. He was the lead candidate for the European Commission presidency. but EU leaders publicly snubbed him, giving the job to Ursula von der Leyen instead. And he didn't take it lightly. But Weber is a tough player. He secured the overall party presidency in 2022. Then he cemented his absolute control with a massive re-election victory at the party congress in Valencia last year. Finally, they are the votes he trades. Last November, his lawmakers teamed up with the far right to weaken corporate sustainability rules. And his group defended the move, arguing they simply had to find a majority to help companies do business. But you see, this cooperation actually goes further. And last week's investigations show his group even collaborated with Alternative für Deutschland in a text chat to advance tougher migration laws. But you might ask, why does this even matter? And the answer is simple. Recent elections show voters demand more right-wing answers to political questions. But the so-called cordon sanitaire, or Brandmauer in German, forces difficult compromises with the left and liberals, leaving fewer people happy. And this is not just about the European Parliament, but the Bundestag too. And so, with the economy struggling, European and German conservative leaders face a dilemma. Should they stick to centrist alliances, or maybe quietly work with the far right? And some speculate Weber is now eyeing a new mega job merging the European Commission and Council presidencies. He certainly knows how to gather votes, but can he handle the trouble that comes with them?
And for more on this, let's go straight to the European Parliament, where correspondent Vincenzo Genovese is standing by for us this morning. Vincenzo, what is the latest here?
Yes, Maeve, indeed, the pressure is mounting on Manfred Weber, the chair of the European People's Party. Yesterday evening, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stepped in saying, we don't accept this, we don't cooperate with the far right, we expect this to end, and we expect consequences. This will be Weber's responsibility. So Weber has always defended that his group is not cooperating with the far right, despite the fact that on migration-related files, EPP has voted in the same way as the far-right groups, including Europe of Sovereign Nations, to which belongs Alternative for Germany. So let's ask them. Joining me is Thomas Fröhlich, one of the lawmakers of Alternative for Germany here in Brussels. So did this cooperation take place?
I'm not a member of this committee. It was decided on the Libe committee's level. I'm not a member of the Libe committee, but as you can see, there was a certain form of cooperation on technical level. It's not an official cooperation, and they voted on the same report, and it's not for the first time. I mean, we had already votes on the budget. I think it was 1 year ago.
Not the first time of technical level cooperation, technical level talks.
I mean, we just tabled some amendments. Yeah, we called for more funding for physical barriers, physical border barriers. We called for more funding for external hubs for returns, and it was, I think, 1.5 years ago. And our amendments that were tabled by our group were supported by the EPP at this time. So it was not the first time that we turned down the so-called...
Same views, more or less. But would you say that the firewall, the Brandmauer, has fallen, at least here in Brussels?
As I said, it was 1.5 years. It has fallen for the first time, and now for the second time. We don't care about firewalls or about cordon sanitaires, because in our opinion, for us, the interest of the Germans and the Europeans comes first, and then the party interests. And now it's up to the EPP how they want to handle this situation. As I said, for us, the interest of our voters comes first, and I think in the democracy, it would be better if also the other groups would respect the will of the people. And as I said, in many countries, parties like the AfD or like Rassemblement National in France are the strongest or second strongest party. So I think we need to respect the will of.
And they are already cooperating with EPP parties in other countries, but not in Germany. So what's the consequences in Germany, if any?
as I said, we put the interest of the German people first, and now it's up to the CDU. I think for the CDU it's a problem. The cordon sanitaire, the so-called firewall, is a bigger threat to the CDU than
Okay,
to us.
Vincenzo, thank you so much there for that live update, and also to your guest, the AfD MEP Thomas Frohlich. Well, that does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end. For our millions of viewers with Irish blood, happy St. Patrick's Day. Stay with us here on Euronews, as later from 1:30 Central European Time, we'll be bringing you a very special live show all about healthcare and health innovation in the European Union. The Euronews Health Summit will look into the complex health landscape with a deep dive into AI, rare kidney disease and the EU's health mandate. And we'll also be joined by the EU Commissioner for Health.